Hello everyone. I put out a community post asking people what buffs they wanted to see Pokemon get in the next generation. I got hundreds of responses ranging from ability changes, stat changes, move pool additions, and more. I picked 10, most of which got a ton of likes, but also a few I just personally found interesting. I'll be competitively analyzing all of these buffs through the lens of competitive singles, particularly the overused tier. In competitive singles, Pokemon are sorted into tiers based on usage, with overused at the top. Below that is underused, then rarely used, never used, PU, and finally, zero used. And OU has a ban list where a lot of extremely powerful legendary Pokemon and a couple other broken Pokemon go, called Ubers. For each buff, I'll discuss how the Pokemon currently works and what roles it fulfills, as well as give the tier it's currently in. Then I'll explain how I think the buff would change things and predict what tier the Pokemon would be in Generation 10. I should also note that when I consider these Generation 10 buffs, I'm assuming that there are no Z moves, no Dynamax, and no Terastallization. I will assume that Mega Evolutions will be around though, not only because they've made a recent comeback in Legends ZA, but also because Mega Evolutions are really just normal Pokemon with good stats. They don't change the metagame in the same way that mechanics like Z-Moves, Dynamax, and Terastallization do. And for the background footage, enjoy the chaos of National Dex Overused. Now, let's get right into it. The first buff is for Aerodactyl. IDK puts some random name, wants it to get Brave Bird and Head Smash. Aerodactyl isn't in Scarlet and Violet. Its last appearance was in Generation 8, where it was in the never used tier. It has the unremarkable Rock and Flying type, and poor or mediocre stats across the board except for its exceptional base 130 speed and a decent base 105 attack. It has a decent move pool, nothing remarkable, but solid coverage on the physical side, and it has healing with Roost, decent utility moves like Stealth Rock and Whirlwind, and the setup move Dragon Dance. What's really interesting to us is the abilities Aerodactyl has. Two are almost entirely useless, Pressure and Unnerve, but it also gets Rock Head, which protects from recoil damage. This made it a big deal back in Generation 3, clicking Double Edge without recoil. More importantly though, Aerodactyl being Rock and Flying type, and having Rock Head would make Brave Bird and Head Smash absolutely amazing on it. These moves are 120 and 150 base power respectively, and massive recoil damage is the main drawback. On top of that, both of these moves make contact. While this is normally a bad thing, Mega Aerodactyl has the ability Tough Claws, which boosts the power of contact moves by 1.3 times. So getting Brave Bird and Head Smash would not only be a massive buff to regular Aerodactyl with Rockhead, but also the Tough Claws Mega Evolution. And the Mega Form has the stats to back up these powerful moves, with 135 base attack and base 150 speed. In Mega Aerodactyl's last appearance, Generation 7, it was in the underused tier, but Brave Bird and Head Smash would undoubtedly be a crazy buff. Mega Aerodactyl would likely do much the same as it did before, run 4 attack sets, 3 attack sets with Roost, and sometimes run Dragon Dance. With these insanely powerful new moves though, I think Mega Aerodactyl has a real shot at being an overused. Power creep may push it down to underused again despite these buffs, but I think Tough Claws plus moves of that power level with a 150 base speed would be enough to keep it in the main format. But what about regular Aerodactyl with Rockhead? I think it would almost entirely stop running support and Dragon Dance sets and go all in on Choice Band. Regular Aerodactyl clicking Brave Bird and Head Smash with a Choice Band is only slightly weaker than Mega Aerodactyl despite Tough Claws and the higher attack stat. And of course, it won't take recoil damage. Spamming Choice Band Brave Bird over and over without recoil, paired with Head Smash and Earthquake for Steel types, is a terrifying combo. I suspect that the better speed, bulk, and the ability to swap moves of Mega Aerodactyl would still make it the favored pick, but I think regular Aerodactyl would be a monster itself, and probably viable in the overused tier. I don't think it would get quite enough usage though, so it would probably end up staying in underused. Next up, a buff for Swampert. Dark Mental Master wants to give it Regenerator instead of its current useless ability, Damp. Swampert has the incredible Water and Ground type, weak to nothing but grass. It has solid stats across the board, except for a poor base 60 speed. This doesn't hurt it much though, since Swampert is primarily used as a pivot with Flip Turn. It often wants to move last to safely bring in teammates. Other utility moves like Knock Off and Stealth Rock ensure that Swampert is never passive. Swampert's main issue is that it's a wall without any way to heal. It doesn't get Shore Up or Recover, but it has the stats and move pool of a support Pokemon. This is why, despite having so much going for it, it often ends up in low tiers. In Generation 9, Swampert is in the never used tier. Regenerator, though, would fix its one problem. Now it has healing, and for a pivot, Regenerator is way better than a recovery move. Swampert would be free to run Assault Vest sets with 4 attacks, and Rocky Helmet or Leftovers if it wants to keep using Stealth Rock. It could flip turn over and over again, bringing in allies safely and never dying. Regenerator Swampert isn't just good in theory. It's proven to be a menace. In the almost any ability format, an alternate metagame where, as the name implies, you can give a Pokemon almost any ability, Regenerator Swampert is used on 9% of teams. This is a format where Sword of Ruin Roaring Moon exists, and in that format, Regenerator Swampert is a top tier. It's a safe bet to say that if Swampert was granted this ability, it would instantly become a staple in Overused. Depending on the metagame surrounding it, there's even a chance that Swampert would be deemed too powerful, just too easy to come in and click Flip Turn, and it could get banned to Ubers. I don't think this would happen though. My prediction is Overused. Next, let's talk about a buff to a Mega Evolution. Mr. S wants to give Pidgeot Focus Blast. Pidgeot's last generation was Generation 7, and Mega Pidgeot is really all that matters. Pidgeot's regular form is absolute garbage, it was in the 0 used tier in Gen 7, and it was trash in the 0 used tier. Mega Pidgeot, on the other hand, is a respectable force in the underused tier. With an amazing 121 base speed, 135 base special attack, and defenses in the 80s, Mega Pidgeot has a very solid stat spread. What really makes it great, though, is its ability No Guard, which means it will never, ever miss a move. 135 special attack combined with a stab hurricane that never misses is a serious force to be reckoned with. Mega Pidgeot can spam Hurricane without needing rain, hit every time, and just doing that is enough to make it a really solid threat. The problem is that this is all Pidgeot can really do. No Guard is one of the best abilities in the game, but Hurricane is the only thing Pidgeot does that really takes advantage of No Guard. It also gets Heat Wave, which is nice to hit 100% of the time instead of 90%, but it's not a huge deal. And as far as coverage goes, Heat Wave and Hurricane is all you get. This leaves Pidgeot walled by basically any rock type, notably Tyranitar and Garganacl. Steel types with decent special defense are also rough, most notably Heatran, which has Flash Fire for Heat Wave. If Mega Pidgeot got Focus Blast though, that would be a total game changer. Thanks to No Guard, Focus Blast would never miss, and it would hit Rock and Steel types super effectively with 120 base power, way stronger than Heat Wave's 95 base power. It certainly wouldn't change what Mega Pidgeot does. It would do the same thing it does now, just be a fast, strong, special attacking breaker, but it would be so much better. And it would be so satisfying to click Focus Blast and be certain it wouldn't miss. It's a competitive player's dream. If I factor in power creep, I don't think this buff would be quite enough to get Mega Pidgeot to Overused. I just don't think it would get the usage it needs, but I do think it would be viable in Overused and a respected metagame force in Underused. I could also see it getting banned from Underused, but I'd say it's more likely than not to stay in that tier. Now for a fan favorite, a buff for Breloom. Im Fowler wants Breloom to get Grassy Glide and Trailblaze. This isn't much of a big ask. Both of these moves are given to most grass types. Breloom not getting either of these moves in Generation 9 seems like an intentional design choice, but I could see them being given to Breloom in the future. The reason they probably didn't give these moves to Breloom already is Technician. This boosts the power of moves 60 base power or lower by 1.5 times. So Trailblaze, normally 50 base power, would be 75 on Breloom, and Grassy Glide, normally 55, would be 82.5 base power. Would this really be a big deal though? Currently, Breloom is in the rarely used tier. It has an impressive base 130 attack and mediocre or poor stats everywhere else, notably with 70 base speed. What really keeps it going is its two amazing abilities. The first is Poison Heal. Breloom will run a Toxic Orb, Protect to get an insane amount of healing like Gliscor does, and usually run Terra Normal Facade and 2 Stabs. Other sets use Technician, most commonly with loaded dice to get an insanely strong Bullet Seed, since Technician boosts every hit, but Focus Blast and Choice Band are also seen. We really want to focus on the Technician sets. The Poison Heal sets definitely wouldn't use Grassy Glide or Trailblaze ever. Now, Trailblaze, I don't think would really matter. Sure, some Breloom would run it on Swords Dance sets, but mostly it's a worse version of Bullet Seed, just way weaker. And while speed is a problem for Breloom, it has priority with Mach Punch, which is a better solution to that problem than Trailblaze. Grassy Glide, though, is interesting. Grassy Glide gets +1 priority in grassy terrain, so if you were to pair Breloom with a Rillaboom or a Thwackey, when you factor in the terrain boost and technician, Breloom would have one of the most powerful priority moves in the game. To give you an idea of how strong it would be, Choice Band Breloom Grassy Glide in terrain is guaranteed to one-hit KO Walking Wake after Stealth Rock damage. Now, would this be enough to make Breloom rise a tier? I don't think so. Grass types aren't amazing in general, and starting a build with 2 of them is going to be extremely difficult to support defensively. Still, I do think this would give Breloom a real shot for viability in Overused, even if it's only on the very rarely seen Rillaboom Grass spam teams. Definitely not enough usage to become Overused, though. Power creep has been hitting Breloom hard, and it'll probably continue to do so. I'd imagine it will end up rarely used or never used next generation even with these buffs, but as I said, there would be some really cool Breloom plus Rillaboom or Breloom plus Thwackey teams out there. Alright, these last 2 buffs haven't been too game-breaking, so let's go over one that would absolutely end competitive Pokemon as you know it. But before that, if you're enjoying the video so far, please consider subscribing and leaving a like, it helps out a lot. And if you want your ideas to be featured in a video like this in the future, make sure you're subscribed and have the bell on for notifications so you won't miss my community posts where I collect responses for these videos. Now, on to perhaps the most game-breaking buff on this list, Tribune Aquila wants to give Xurkitree Thunderclap. Xurkitree was introduced in Generation 7 as one of the Ultra Beasts, and it ended up getting banned from Underused, but not getting nearly enough usage to be in Overused officially. Xurkitree has mediocre stats in the 70s and 80s across the board, with the exception of its insane 173 base special attack. That is the highest special attack of any non-Mega Evolution. And they gave it Tail Glow, which boosts special attack by 3 stages. On top of that, it has all the coverage it needs. Although Hidden Power Ice wouldn't be available after Generation 7, with that special attack stat, Grass Knot and Energy Ball to hit ground types is really all you need. Thunderbolt can power through even most resists easily after a Tail Glow. This insane special attack and decent move pool made it too much for Underused, with sets like Z Hypnosis and Z Electric Terrain giving a speed boost and then allowing it to sweep, but its poor stats made it an inconsistent breaker and an even more inconsistent sweeper in Overused, leaving Xurkitree to rot, essentially. The sweeping sets with Tail Glow were the most popular, but people also tried Choice Specs and Choice Scarf. In Generation 8, Xurkitree ended up in the rarely used tier. Not a great placement, but at least it was actually good in that tier, acting as a breaker and a pivot with Volt Switch. Xurkitree's biggest limitation has always been its combination of poor bulk and poor speed. Having the power to destroy even Blissey easily with special attacks is amazing, but if you're slow and frail, you won't get the chance to set up and actually sweep against all but the most passive teams. Unless, of course, you went and gave Xurkitree a powerful stab priority move like Thunderclap. Thunderclap is Raging Bolt's signature move, with 70 base power, and it's basically a special electric-type Sucker Punch, only works if the opponent attacks. If Xurkitree got this move, it would run Tail Glow, Thunderclap, Thunderbolt, and a coverage move like Energy Ball, and it would be almost completely unstoppable. To give you an idea of how strong this is, without even having any boosting item, a +3 Xurkitree Thunderclap has a good chance to one-hit KO a max HP Zamazenta. With a boosting item like the Magnet, you one-hit KO Dragapult, an electric resist, with Thunderclap after a single Tail Glow. This Pokemon would be on screens teams likely to shore up its mediocre bulk, while Thunderclap fixes the speed problem. This would send Xurkitree straight to Ubers. It would be way too much for Overused. There would be some counterplay for sure. Substitute is commonly used against Thunderclap and Sucker Punch already. Bulky electric resists like Curem could survive and hit hard back. Encore could be used on faster Pokemon to lock Xurkitree into Thunderclap or Tail Glow. But honestly, this wouldn't be enough. Dealing with Xurkitree would be an absolute nightmare both in the builder and in the battle itself, and I can't see it staying in Overused. Alright, now let's cool things down with a bit more of a reasonable request. First Ed wants Meloetta's signature move, Relic Song, to be changed so that it acts like Photon Geyser, selecting whether to be physical or special based on which attacking stat is higher. Currently in Generation 9, Meloetta is sitting in the never used tier, where it has a real role thanks to its impressive stats. It is rare to see a 600 base stat total Pokemon so low, though. It has 100 HP, a fantastic 128 in both special attack and special defense, and a respectable base 90 speed, but that's where the good news ends. A normal and psychic typing isn't horrible defensively, but it's not very impressive offensively. Its ability, Serene Grace, is incredible on many Pokemon, but Meloetta doesn't take advantage of it very well. Serene Grace doubles the odds of secondary effects, but generally Meloetta doesn't want to use moves with secondary effects. It's more commonly used as a Choice Scarf or Specs Pokemon with Trick, U-Turn, Hyper Voice, Shadow Ball, Psyshock, and Focus Blast. It can also run substitute sets with Calm Mind. Special defense drops with Shadow Ball are nice, but rarely a big deal. Meloetta basically never uses Relic Song. The reason is that this initiates a form change. Meloetta goes from its regular form to a pirouette form, which is honestly way better. The pirouette form maintains respectable bulk, but instead gets 128 speed and attack, and it changes from normal psychic to normal fighting. And on top of that, Meloetta has a great physical move pool. Close Combat, U-Turn, Knockoff, Triple Axle, Ice Punch, Stone Edge. It even gets Swords Dance if it wants to boost up. The problem is that to get to this form, you have to use Relic Song, a 75 base power special attack. As good as Meloetta Pirouette is, it's not worth wasting a turn over. And if you're using a physical set, not only do you have to waste a turn doing almost no damage, but now you're only working with 3 move slots, since you definitely don't want to click Relic Song again and revert to the special attacking form. And if your opponent has a Ghost type, they can block your Relic Song transformation over and over again, keeping you locked with a physical set on a Pokemon with only 77 base attack. Turning Relic Song into a physical attack on more heavily attack-invested Meloetta would basically not help at all. It would be very slightly stronger in the base form, assuming max attack investment and a minus special attack nature on Meloetta, but all the other problems are still there. Once you transform, you don't want to click Relic Song again and change back, so you've still wasted a turn doing very little damage. Since base form Meloetta has terrible attack, you can still be blocked by Ghost, and you still have to work with 3 moves. The real buff that Meloetta needs is being able to start the battle in its pirouette form. That would open the world up to Meloetta. With that coverage, speed, and attack, I think Meloetta Pirouette would be in Overused, and a solid Pokemon in Overused at that. Now, it would face serious competition from Mega Lopunny if Megas return, so that might see it drop to Underused, but since Meloetta can run a Choice Band, it would be way stronger than Lopunny. Honestly, it's hard to say which would end up outclassing which. Given that Meloetta doesn't take up a Mega slot, I think it would at very least be viable in Overused, and probably get enough usage to be officially in the tier. Now, let's talk about a bulky Pokemon buff. Mr. S wants both of the Goodras to get Recover. The tale of Goodra is a sad one. Most 600 base stat total pseudo-legendaries have their time to shine, but Goodra never did. It was in the underused tier in its Generation 6 introduction, and it's been dropping ever since, now in never used in Generation 9. Generation 9 did also introduce the Hisuian form though, the Steel Dragon typing being noticeably better than Goodra's Mono Dragon, and it has a better defense stat. This form isn't amazing either though, it's in rarely used. There are 3 big reasons that these Pokemon are so underwhelming, despite an incredible base stat total and, for the Hisuian form, amazing typing. The first is that they're both mixed attackers, with 100 attack and 110 special attack. While this isn't a problem in and of itself, they'd both much rather just commit to one attacking stat and have those points put into bulk or speed. The second issue is that they have no good setup moves. The best is Acid Armor. Both of these Pokemon would love Dragon Dance or Calm Mind, but they don't get it. And the third issue, probably the biggest of all, no recovery. Both Goodra and its Hisuian form do have good attack and special attack though, and no lack of coverage. They get moves like Ice Beam, Flamethrower, Thunderbolt, Knockoff, Earthquake, and of course, Draco Meteor. So both of these Pokemon typically end up with leftovers, Choice Specs, or Assault Vest, just spamming attacks until they die. And they do this well, they're decent Pokemon. Hisuian Goodra in particular has a real niche in the overused tier, mostly paired with Alomomola for the Wish support to heal it up. But what if these Goodra forms could heal themselves? This would honestly be a completely game-changing buff, especially for the Hisuian form. Dragon Steel is an insanely good typing. With utility moves like Knock Off and Dragon Tail, all the coverage in the world, great defenses, and now recovery, I think Hisuian Goodra would rise to the overused tier. Goodra would finally get a chance to shine and show off those amazing defenses. Regular Goodra would probably be a lot better too, but not having that steel typing is a big deal. It would probably end up in the underused or rarely used tier. Alright, now let's go back to an offensive Pokemon. Emilio wants to give Pupitar Shell Smash, which really means give Tyranitar Shell Smash. Tyranitar has been in the overused tier since Generation 3, and it remains overused in Generation 9. Despite the Rock and Dark typing being famously weak to almost everything, Tyranitar has an impressive base 134 attack, a 600 base stat total, and the great ability Sandstream, which effectively gives it an Assault Vest for free. The most popular Tyranitar sets are offensive, using Knock Off, Stone Edge, Ice Punch, Earthquake, and Low Kick, and sometimes Stealth Rock. They'll run a Smooth Rock, Choice Band Assault Vest, or Heavy Duty Boots most commonly. Tyranitar can do what your team wants, though. If you need a specially defensive wall, it's great at that. If you need a breaker, it can do that too. The set variety is part of what makes Tyranitar so interesting and well-loved in the community. Now let's discuss the buff that would absolutely kill that set diversity. What if we went and gave Tyranitar arguably the best boosting move in the game, Shell Smash? Shell Smash is generally reserved for Pokemon with poor defensive stats and mediocre offensive stats. So if we gave Tyranitar, a Pokemon with insane bulk, 134 base attack, and all the coverage in the world, Shell Smash, things wouldn't go well. The only limitation to Tyranitar with this set is its poor base 61 speed, but for a Shell Smash user, this isn't even that bad. Even with an Adamant nature, you outspeed Dragapult after a Shell Smash, and with a Jolly nature, you outspeed slower Choice Scarf users like Landorus Therian. It's pretty reasonable to assume that Tyranitar would be banned from overused to Ubers. The only way I could see it staying in the tier is if power creep really goes crazy and the metagame is extremely unforgiving to Tyranitar in particular. If Terra stayed around, like we have in Generation 9, then Shell Smash Tyranitar would definitely go straight to Ubers. But since it can't change its type, maybe the fact that Fast or Scarfers would be able to one-shot it, and the fact that it's weak to a lot of priority like Aqua Jet, Bullet Punch, and Grassy Glide might be able to keep it in the tier. But I doubt it. I can't see a Shell Smash Tyranitar being balanced and overused. Now for a much more reasonable request, Amazed Desert 924 wants Snorlax to get Slack Off. In Generation 2, Snorlax was the king of overused and even the king of Ubers, but it's been falling off ever since. In Generation 9, it's in the lowest tier, 0 used. It's a mono normal type with an amazing base 160 HP, pretty great 110 attack and special defense, and garbage stats elsewhere, 65 defense and 35 speed. Its abilities are all quite solid. Thick Fat halves damage from fire and ice attacks, immunity means you can't get poisoned, and Gluttony is used on some gimmicky sets that use Recycle or Belly Drum. Despite Snorlax's insane fall from prominence, it's still mostly doing what it did back in the day. Curse, Rest, Body Slam, and some coverage move. Basically, if we gave Snorlax Slack Off, it would use Slack Off instead of Rest. This would undoubtedly be a step up. Sure, Rest is nice in some matchups where you want to heal off status, but it would turn Snorlax into a much more reliable wall and a far less passive Pokemon, since it wouldn't need to spend those turns sleeping. Would it be enough to turn things around, though? Probably, but just a little. I can't imagine Snorlax getting higher than the never used or rarely used tier, even with Recover. Unless the metagame is just somehow extremely favorable for Snorlax, I think it will still just be a mediocre setup sweeper in low tiers. Also, although it's nerfed now, the Ogov Berry used to heal 50% health, and when paired with Gluttony to eat the berry at 50% health or lower, Snorlax basically had Recover in the past. It's not quite the same, since it couldn't control exactly when the healing happened, it had to give up the Thick Fat or immunity ability to run Gluttony, and that took up its item slot, but it gave us a look at what Snorlax with Recovery looked like, and it didn't really help much. So, sorry Snorlax, even if you get Slack Off, you'll still be snoozing. Now for the last buff, I saw several people request a Crobat stat buff. Nobody mentioned any specifics, but I still think this would be interesting to consider. Pokemon have gotten stat buffs before, but usually just small ones, 10 points here or there. Honestly though, that could be all Crobat needs. Crobat is such a cool Pokemon. Its main claim to fame is the defensively amazing Poison and Flying type. Its evolution line is the only group of Pokemon to have that typing. It also has the insane base 130 speed. Its other stats are mediocre though, in the range of 70 to 90. Crobat's last appearance was in Generation 8 in the rarely used tier, but it was one of the kings of the tier and it was solid and underused as well. There are a lot of ways to use Crobat. The most lame, and unfortunately usually the most common, is a Defog pivot, running heavy-duty boots with Defog, Roost, U-turn, and Brave Bird. But it can also use Brave Bird with a more attack-invested set or a Choice Band. Crobat also gets Nasty Plot and shockingly good coverage with Heat Wave, which works perfectly with Flying and Poison Stab. Despite being around since Generation 2, Crobat has never been in the overused tier, but it consistently manages to be in underused or at least viable in underused. A small stat buff might be all it needs to finally see some usage in overused, and the most likely place where this buff can make a big impact is in attack, I would say. It already has 90 base attack. If that was 100 or 110, those Brave Birds would really be hitting. Probably not enough to get significant usage in overused, but likely enough to keep it as a threat in underused. It's been chilling in underused from Generation 2 to 8, and it got Dexited in Generation 9, but I'd love to see it continue its run in Generation 10. Other stat buffs would be cool too. More HP would be great for defensive sets and allow it to click more Brave Birds without having to use a Roost. And a special attack buff might see its Nasty Plot sets become a lot more common. Crobat is just generally an awesome Pokemon, and while it's not going to be OU material unless something crazy happens, a stat buff is deserved, and I think everyone would like to see it. And that's 10, but let's go over one more buff as a bonus. Minty wanted to see Ferrothorn get a buff by finally realizing the error of his ways and apologizing to Slowbro and Executor for his offensive remarks. This would be an incredible buff, and we'd get to see Ferrothorn go straight to the Anything Goes tier for sure. But honestly, I don't see it happening. Ferrothorn is stuck in his ways, just like he sticks to the ceilings of caves. It will likely remain in overuse. Well, that's all. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider subscribing and leaving a like. Let me know in the comments what buffs you want to see in Generation 10. And if you want your ideas to be featured in a future video like this, make sure you're subscribed and have the bell turned on so you'll see my community posts where I get your thoughts for these videos. Well, have a good one, and I'll see you next time.